So the idea behind crossplane is actually the idea that started with Kubernetes itself. Most people understand Kubernetes as a way to run containers in a cluster, but that was never really the goal. The goal of Kubernetes is to have an API that can be extended and a scheduler that can manage basically essentially anything, especially since the introduction with custom resource definitions, right? So what crossplane gives, there are actually a couple of layers. The first one would be resources, custom resource definitions and controllers in Kubernetes that enable you to manage anything. EC2 instances, external load balancers, GitHub repositories, Azure, doesn't matter, right? So it extends Kubernetes beyond containers into everything. And then there is a second layer, which we call compositions. And the idea behind compositions is to enable people to create services that others can consume. Like, this is what it means to have a cluster in my company. This is what it means to have a backend application, so on and so forth. And in a way, it is a platform to create platforms, internal developer platforms in an organization. The adoption is, there is of course adoption, general adoption of community. A good example of an adoption is KubeCon. We have 7 or 8 talks about crossplane, I think the most amount of talks, so it's becoming extremely popular. And then within corporate adoption, we are talking typically about big organizations and mostly big organizations because their pain, the pain that they're experiencing right now is higher than small organizations. So you're typically big enterprises, banks, insurances, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so this year we want to focus on enabling companies to use crossplane at massive scale. And that's from technical perspective, and then there is a human perspective. We want to enable all crossplane users to be successful with their customers, meaning developers, testers, and so on and so forth. So we want to build those layers on top of it that will enable fully SREs, DevOps people, operators, and so on and so forth to create platforms for the rest of their organization. I'm beyond thrilled. I've been locked in a house for a couple of years like everybody else, and I was really missing this, missing human contact, right? And in my case at least, that's especially important because I'm in a remote company, working fully remote, all my colleagues are remote, all my friends are spread around the world. This is an opportunity to catch up with all the people you know. That's the first, probably most important step, because what we want to enable people is to literally manage everything, right? And that means, as a minimum, bare minimum, full coverage with AWS, Azure, Google. I mean, there are many other providers, but those are the 3 most commonly used, right? And I think that half a year ago, something like that, we reached the full coverage, 100%. We have different projects to tackle that coverage. One is called JET, that is code generation, that enables us to map the resources into crossplane definitions. That's one of the important, massive, huge benefits, I believe, being Kubernetes native, being cloud native, right? Because if you look at similar projects, if there are such, typically a project would need to create its own ecosystem. Oh, so now if I want to do this, I need to create my own tooling to do it, and so on and so forth. Given that we are part of Kubernetes ecosystem, we are Kubernetes native, basically you can integrate with literally any other tool that exists. So you want CI/CD, Tekton, Argo workflows, whichever tool, doesn't matter, GitOps, Argo CD, Flux, and so on and so forth, simply by applying certain standards that others are applying in the same ecosystem, right? And that's massive. That means that we can focus on what really matters instead of trying to replicate what other sections of the industry already did. So CrossPlane is an open source project donated to Cloud Native Computing Foundation, so it is completely independent, open source, and so on and so forth. And it does most of the things that I was explaining so far is what CrossPlane is doing, right? Now, Upbound is an enterprise layer on top of crossplane, right? It provides certain enterprise features like a marketplace where you can easily access resources that you might want to consume, visual editor and visual representation of the resources, some features related to security, manage control planes and stuff like that, right? So it's an enterprise layer, actually it's not the right word, it's not an enterprise layer, it's enterprise version of the concepts behind crossplane.
More and more customers start to deploy containers, Kubernetes in cloud environments. Like there's some nuances or differences that come up around visibility and security. Hard to see in containers. Things are coming and going. So what does Sysdig do? We're helping give you that visibility and the security controls you need in the end so that you can be confident when you're rolling out these applications that you're secure, you've reduced risk, and so on, right? Yeah, I think when we think about use cases with Sysdig, there are things that we can help with from what we say is source to cloud, right? From the time you're building your apps all the way through running them and then responding. A lot of folks have been doing things like image scanning and vulnerability management for a while. What they're finding is that runtime security for containers, securing the cloud with real-time visibility, that's something that a lot of folks are now realizing the need for, or the need for tools that really give them the level that they need to see. So, and that's really about detecting threats. You name it, Log4j and all these things that have come up. You want to know what's happening, is anyone exploiting it? And so in this world of containers, Kubernetes cloud, there's a lot of appetite for getting the right things in place, which again is where Sysdig comes in. Yeah, very, very good. It's always fun to have all the different cultures coming together and to see what different companies of different sizes are doing. At a very small digital company, come through and say, we're running 1,000 nodes of Kubernetes. We know some large enterprises that are only at like 150, right? But it's interesting to see the different dynamics of how people are all trying to figure out what are the right things to do, what are the right open source technologies to use, and again, hopefully coming to talk about what should I be worried about when it comes to security, compliance, and so on. When we think about the cloud environments themselves, AWS got some really good tooling for seeing what's happening and for security. Google, the same. Azure, the same. IBM, same, right? But what happens if I really do want to be multi-cloud and I really even want to have things on-prem? So it's helpful if you can see all these things together. You've got a kind of your controls in place that are consistent, right? So we are saying, look, every company is at least, we know, 2 clouds, and not to mention the on-prem stuff. So we're starting to see more of that. Maybe they're starting containers Kubernetes on one, but then they're quickly finding ways to do other, potentially just different apps on a Google versus an AWS. And so getting some consistency there in terms of security and monitoring is, again, something that most folks appreciate when they get there. Yeah, it's a good question, and we've tried to put a lot of focus there because every company has some sort of compliance mandate. You might not be fintech, but maybe you're healthcare, or maybe you're just trying to achieve a level of compliance that gives your customers assurance that you're sound business practices. So the way we look at compliance is this, right? One, you need to sort of define the controls that you need to put in place, right? And that might not be the same for every company, but once you define those things, implement the controls, test the controls regularly, and then prove that you've got those things in place and that you're watching for any violations, right? So where Sysdig helps with that is we've done some things where as I like to say, we've given you a way to measure against the book, chapter, and verse of like PCI, for instance, right? One of our international customers, who is a public case study of ours, WorldPay, part of FIS, right? They need to be PCI compliant. So they use some of the pre-built things that we have that's helping you understand, okay, if I put these controls in, it meets these requirements for this part of the standard. And we've done that against HIPAA and GDPR, ISO, all the things, right? So you can try and do all that on your own, it becomes a little bit complicated, right? And so if you can have something that's out of the box, letting you put some things in place, get some reports, it helps accelerate that process of putting in controls and being able to prove that. Along with audit, right? One of our things that we're known for is that deep level of visibility. So I can see what you have done as a user, or I can see what different applications are doing across and together, and have that as a readout. Even if the containers and things are no longer there, you still have it. And that's a key thing for compliance long term. Yeah, I think what you see us doing right now is trying to just get more ingrained in the cloud security side of things, meaning, yes, I'm running containers Kubernetes, but I'm also pulling in various cloud services, sometimes things like the serverless platforms. Fargate, Google has Cloud Run, ACI on the other side. So getting more ability to see into those things, secure those things, right? I think just more in helping customers control configurations, infrastructure as code. So there's still a lot more on the same theme. Can I see what's happening, and can I secure what's happening? And so, as different things emerge and change, we're just trying to stay ahead of the game and give people what they need in terms of their application environments.
Well, it's very exciting to be at KubeCon, right? Obviously, it's the first conference for most people for 3 years, right? And it's just great to see, like, the whole thing was packed, and the hotels are packed out there, right? So it's just awesome to see everybody, right? We're creators of an open source project called Open Policy Agent. It's one of the graduated projects at CNCF, and it's just awesome now to meet a lot of community, the open community, see how they're using the project and so forth, right? So that's the best part of being at KubeCon for me. Well, let me start with Open Policy Agent, right, which is the open source project. We created that project with the main maintainers of that project. It's a project really around policy and authorization. And it takes the concept of defining policy and removing it from applications and services. So it's a service that anybody can use to develop policies and manage policies and enforce policies. And it's got a language called Rego to define the policies. It's now a graduated project, right, within CNCF, which means that it's used by many, many organizations, end user organizations, a lot of vendors use it as well. And we are the main creators and moderators of that project. Now Styra, the company behind you, is a company that's commercializing OPA. And our focus is really around a space we call cloud native authorization. And just at the high level, you're probably familiar with authentication, which is who a person is. Authorization is what a person can do or what a service can do. So we're building a company which is all about authorization. And authorization or access happens at different parts of the application stack. It happens at the bottom of the stack at the Kubernetes level, and it happens right at the top of the stack at applications, right? If you're an online banking application, what can a user do within the application? Or if you're working within a bank, what is this person entitled to do? So we are doing authorization across all those levels, starting at the bottom, Kubernetes, and moving ourselves up that stack. Oh, absolutely. So OPA has been around now for a couple of years. And one of the things that I find fascinating about an open source project is the open source project is the product manager for me, right? It tells me where users are using the product, what are the use cases that are currently being adopted, and what are the new use cases just around the corner. So what we've seen is a steady rise of new use cases for OPA, but the main use case is predominantly Kubernetes, and it's moving now to add to that, service mesh use cases, and now we're seeing kind of early use cases around the application stack, right? So from bottom up is what we're seeing at the moment. I can't tell you about what's happening on the roadmap during this interview, but yes, lots of exciting things, right? But above all, the exciting thing is meeting customers and users of open source, because that really dictates what we build as a company, right? So being a company that is kind of rooted in open source, that's where we get a lot of our customer feedback from, our input from, and that's how we define our roadmaps.
So what Portworx is at the moment is the SDS layer, so software-defined storage, leader in the market. So what the use cases for our solution is migration usually. So one of the struggles of our customers is that when they want to migrate applications between clusters, like between AWS, EKS to GKE, so all of these distributions, they have to build like scripts, manual scripts to migrate applications, and that's tough because senior engineers would have to maintain that. Why don't you just kubectl apply one YAML, you specify namespace, you're moving the whole namespace, the data, the application to a different cloud. So as I said, this is totally agnostic, right? So we don't care where you have your cloud, your application, your namespace. We're totally agnostic. So it's just an operator running in your Kubernetes cluster, right? A pod is going to run in every node, and it's going to be creating this pool of storage that you have maybe on-premise in the cloud, and you can save money because you can use the storage that you have anywhere. It can be on-premise or in the cloud, and you can have your applications anywhere, right? When you are trying to fix all these storage issues that you have with your PVCs in production, Portworx is going to approach these in a way that, as I said before, it's totally agnostic. So you deploy this as an operator, a pod of Portworx is going to be running in every node. Once this layer of abstraction is created, you can be providing storage through these storage classes. The provider of your storage class is going to be Portworx, not going to be Kubernetes anymore. Once you have these storage classes created, you can provide PVCs or storage to your Kubernetes applications, and Portworx is going to be the provider of that storage, right? That's how it works. Portworx is really easy to install because, just as I said before, it's just an operator, right? So we have a wizard, so you can generate a spec file. Once you generate that spec file, you apply it, so kubectl apply, and then once that's applied, the operator is going to be deployed, then the storage cluster is going to be deployed, so this pool of storage, and it's not going to take any of your time to integrate with other pieces. It's just an operator, right? Once you are used to Kubernetes, you know that deploying an operator is not a big deal, right? Then so warning signs for a customer that's trying can deal with issues with storage in Kubernetes. So what we see is that when customers are using stateless applications, so applications that don't use data all the time, they think, oh, I'm going to go stateful, and that's my path is going to be like this. It's really easy, right? But then storage comes in, and that's actually a challenge that we see customers trying to fix in production, right? So Portworx is going to try to fix all these issues with backup, disaster recovery, migrations, and security, right? So as I said before, we try to tackle every issue for your data in Kubernetes, right? And then what's in the roadmap? What's the coolest thing that we're doing at the moment? So PDS is what our company, Portworx, is pushing a lot for. So we're trying to get closer to the application, right? How do you do that? How do you do that coming from a storage company, right? So what Portworx is doing is gonna launch PDS. It was GA 2 weeks ago, actually. So PDS is a one-click catalog of data services like Kafka, Mongo, and Redis. So developers, when they want to get a database, they don't have to raise a ticket, wait 2 weeks. So this is trying to fix also that issue, which is just click, and you have your database deployed in production for Kubernetes in your cluster, right? So you can give access to this developer or that developer or yourself as a super admin. Once you provide access to this PDS platform, they go click, and they have a database running in production, right? And they didn't have to do anything. And they don't need to know a lot about Kubernetes either, because this is just a web UI, right? And then Valencia, I mean, I'm from Spain, right? So I'm not very objective in that regard. I really like Valencia. I mean, I think it's a little bit tough for some people to come to Valencia because it doesn't have a huge airport. It's hard to find a direct flight. But I mean, look at the weather, look at the people, look at the prices. So everything is really cool. I think that's the reason they make it here, right? And the weather is like, come on, this is amazing, right?
And how have you found the turnout of the booth? It's been busy.
Right, so I mean, we are having, it goes by cycles, right? Because people go to the keynotes and they are not here, but we're having a lot of popularity. And then look, our Vespa, it's so amazing that everybody's like, hey, I want that Vespa for myself, right? So great.
Yeah, really good. I think for every 10 conversations we're having, there's 2 or 3 that have been fantastic organisations, big global well-known brands. It's a great opportunity to create brand awareness and really kind of explain to people what Orca do. And in most cases, they think it's a fantastic solution, and there's some good follow-up scheduled. Yeah, of course. So Orca is a agentless cloud-native application platform. We scan public cloud environments such as AWS, GCP, and Azure, and we're able to identify all the key security risks or major risks within an organization's public cloud. So in most cases, we're finding that they feel they've got gaps in coverage, or they've got multi-cloud environments, and that they really don't understand what the current risk is today. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one, because I think in most cases organisations understand they have a risk. They're coming to talk to us because they may be using a cloud native tool at the moment, such as Microsoft Defender or AWS Guard Duty. But actually the initial use case might just be they simply don't know what the risk is today. And then before long, the use cases massively expand into all other areas. So in most cases, we find that as we get into a POC, they start identifying other areas of risk, or things like they feel they have gaps in coverage, or they have a traditional vulnerability management program, and all of a sudden that then becomes another use case for them. So they identify various tools they're using and actually potentially putting all of that across to Orca. Very rarely. I mean, maybe in small to medium organisations, some are kind of put their entire kind of cloud environments into, say, just AWS or Azure. But I think in most cases we're seeing that everyone is in a kind of multi-cloud environment. A lot of finance organisations still have kind of historical Oracle cloud, and then almost everyone we're talking to has certainly two, so maybe AWS and Azure, but yeah, there's almost not anybody we're talking to of maybe 2,000 employees and above who isn't in multi-cloud environments. We have obviously certain compliance standards, almost all compliance standards that certainly in finance would require, as you said, in terms of ISO and GDPR and things like that. Things like HIPAA for public sector organisations, but we can also be quite flexible in terms of certain compliance standards that maybe initially aren't within our dashboard. So one of my colleagues recently had a compliance standard for a New Zealand maritime requirement, and we were able to adapt to that and actually help them kind of create a dashboard for that certain compliance. Yeah, of course. So I think one of the things that's really exciting, which we have today, but in terms of how it's evolving and how it will evolve over the next 3 to 6 months, is our attack paths. So being able to actually map out for an organisation how, if someone was to get into a certain EC2 cluster through lateral movement, what the attack path would look like. And that's the stuff when we're having conversations with CISOs, that's the stuff where you really see their eyes light up. That's the kind of information they want to take to the board to actually show what a potential breach is within their organisation. So that's probably the most exciting thing that when we're talking about the roadmap at the moment and where that's going, it's the attack paths that people's face instantly light up and say, that is what I need, that's what I've got to have.
It's been interesting. It's great to be in Valencia. It's a lovely city, a lot of great food. It's good to see everybody back at KubeCon after 2 years of doing everything remotely. It's lovely to be back seeing people, being able to shake hands and look in people's faces again. So that's been great. So Mirantis is highly focused on empowering developers and operators to build the best possible solutions for their customers. And as part of the way we do that is we deliver software solutions as well as support solutions for customers moving into the future. So our big focus is how do we enable customers to focus on delivering value for their business rather than being infrastructure providers themselves. So our product offerings are fell into two spaces. We've got the product offerings that are aimed at the enterprise and the infrastructure side. So we have our container cloud product that focuses on delivering Mirantis Kubernetes engine into the multi-cloud. We've got Mirantis Kubernetes engine. Mirantis Kubernetes engine is our Kubernetes offering to the market. We support both Kubernetes and Swarm as orchestrators, so giving customers that choice, and integrating it very securely into corporate systems. So we've got our Mirantis Secure Registry. Secure Registry is highly focused on providing customers with a secure software supply chain that allows them to manage image distribution and secure images within the containerized world. We wrap those services with our two managed care offerings. So the first one is Ops Care, and OpsCare Plus. OpsCare gives our customers the choice to run the systems themselves, but with Mirantis as the co-pilot hand-holding, providing them that insight as well as 24/7 monitoring. OpsCare Plus is our fully managed service where we take over all the pain of managing that infrastructure on your behalf. Above the line we have Lens. Lens allows customers to visualize Kubernetes clusters and makes Kubernetes a lot more accessible. We call it the Kubernetes IDE. The whole goal of Lens is, as I said, make Kubernetes more accessible, make developers and operators to simplify their lives and to visualize what's happening within their Kubernetes clusters. Primarily, we're seeing a lot of enterprise use cases. I don't think there are any specific use cases that are greater than any others. Most companies are trying to make that transformation from traditional legacy applications into the microservices architectures. A lot of what's driving that, I think, is customers wanting to create great user experience for their consumers, and they want applications that can grow with their businesses. By and large, the range of applications we're seeing is enormous in that market. So Lens is the Kubernetes IDE. Lens is very focused on making Kubernetes more accessible and easier to use for both developers and operators. The whole goal of Lens is to end up for our developers, your average developer is going to have at least an IDE like Visual Studio and probably 10 other windows with 10 other applications in it. Our goal for Lens is to become that one window that consolidates everything Kubernetes for them in one place. More than that, Lens offers Lens Spaces, which allows teams to collaborate and utilize different Kubernetes clusters, as well as dev clusters, giving developers easy access to development clusters on demand, enabled for them so that they can do their testing and their development work before committing code into traditional CI/CD solutions. Lots of very interesting things coming. Lots of stuff in the works. Nothing that we can share publicly right now, but watch this space. Some really, really exciting stuff coming.
So Gitpod takes the effort out of maintaining and setting up a development environment for developers. That means that what was previously days, if not weeks, to get a new hire effective, now becomes mere seconds. The same goes for folks who are already onboarded, who need to spend toil 5 hours a week at one of our customers, for example, on keeping their development environments up and running. This also completely goes away. And both of those things happen because we automate the dev environment setup. And because this automation gets executed regularly, it does not rot, and you have very little toil and overhead in keeping this maintained. Important thing is, it's about the dev environment, and what IDE you want to use on top of that dev environment is up to the developer. We want to integrate, don't dictate, so if you want to use VS Code on the desktop, if you want to use VS Code in the browser, which enables completely new working styles that lead to heavy parallelization and great gain in efficiency as well, or if you want to use JetBrains products on the desktop, all of that you can do with Gitpod, while still leveraging the automation and contextual benefits that Gitpod provides. I'm loving it. It's great to be sort of out and about after being stuck at home essentially for 2 years and meeting great people, having a lot of great conversations, enjoying it a lot. With Gitpod, what we're seeing is that because teams get more and more distributed and there is the office is slowly fading away, distributing hardware to people is a problem. Onboarding just became harder because you got to ship laptops around the world, supply chain problems aren't helping. And then also compliance is tightening and efficiencies will need to go up. So with what we're seeing in the tech market overall, folks need to get more efficient. You just cannot afford anymore to have folks wait for 2 weeks until they get their machine. And once they have it, we need to crank out more than we used to. And this is where Gitpod really shines, because we'll cut down that onboarding time and we'll make developers more efficient and happier. So if you're coming from a VDI space, and we've seen that too, where you're basically using VDI for folks to develop code, there's not such a great experience. And this is also where Gitpod can step in and help with developer retention on top of their productivity, because they're going to have a much better experience. One of our core values is to integrate, don't dictate, and that plays out on several levels. For one, it plays out on the developer. We're first and foremost a developer-focused company. We want to build a product that developers themselves want to use, and we get a lot of love from developers who come to us and want to use it. And one way of making that work is by enabling folks to use what they're used to. So if you want to use a CLI tool to connect to your environment, If you want to use a particular IDE, this is how we want to integrate. If you want to use GitLab or Atlassian or GitHub, we're going to integrate with that as well. So we really want to pick folks up where they are, and there's so much effort that's been invested into providing good developer experience on local machines. This is something that we want to pick up and leverage, but make more easily accessible. On a sort of higher level from an integration perspective, we have a direct integration with GitLab, so in GitLab itself there's a Gitpod button that you can click that integrates nicely. We have a strategic partnership with JetBrains, who came to us and approached us, and we see this remote development thing taking off, and you folks look like you got a handle on this, let's team up, and there's a better together story here, and there really is. So we integrate directly with JetBrains products. You can use Golang, you can use IntelliJ, with all the benefits that Gitpod provides, with what your developers are used to. There's a lot in flux as per usual. What we're seeing now is that getting this up and running and getting to a proof of value, especially in sort of more enterprise contexts that have more requirements, so let's say your 200-300 people shop, is becoming increasingly interesting. And so what you'll see more is a push in that direction, and bring features that, for example, policies. We have a lot of great features, but not in all environments. You'll want to be able to have those features accessible, and you want to exert control over what folks can do. This is something that you'll see land. And you'll see continuous improvement on the development experience, the experience that the direct users of our product will have.
So far, so good. It's great to be back. It's amazing to see how many people have shown up. I know the event sold out, and just a really amazing turnout from the Cloud Native community for this event. And it's really nice to see people in person again, especially my teammates who I haven't seen in a couple of years. Yeah, so Gitlab is a complete DevOps platform. It's the one DevOps platform that goes end to end for every stage of the DevOps lifecycle. And we really just help our customers ship code more quickly, more collaboratively, and more securely. Yeah, I think most people that start using GitLab will start with our source code management and then move on to the other stages. So CI is probably another really popular part of the GitLab platform, and so we're seeing a ton of adoption there. Our plan stage, our secure stage are also very popular. Yeah, so GitLab secure features are involved at the commit stage. So when you're making a new commit to GitLab, if you have our security scanners included in your DevOps lifecycle, then it's going to get, your code's going to get scanned at the commit, and so we'll have our static application security testing, dynamic application security testing, as part of that process. As part of our kind of, secure stage, all the, audit logs and things are provided through the different security scanners that we have built into the product.
Sure. So yeah, Fairwinds builds software that's Kubernetes security, governance, policy. The very short version of it is Kubernetes is still a new paradigm for the vast majority of people. Even platform teams have adopted it, but the developers that are deploying into it still don't really understand it. And so putting in place guardrails so that people aren't deploying things that are over-provisioned, under-provisioned, under or over-permissioned, known CVs, those kinds of things. Just make it easy for developers to deploy things that are correctly configured. Everyone's kind of intimidated by Kubernetes being a new paradigm. Let's just make it easy, put guardrails around it. Now platform teams can write policy. It's enforced in, before a Git merge or a pull request. It's enforced in CI/CD or at the admission controller level. And we make that easy out of the box, make it easy to write custom policy, have a bunch of automation so you can kick out and integrate with the things that you already use. And then we also have some cost management features because people are very bad at setting appropriate resource requests and limits inside of Kubernetes so that their workloads scale appropriately. I mean, there's a lot of use cases that we address. Again, the easiest thing is just you want to use Kubernetes, you want to use it correctly, we give you confidence that you're doing that, full stop. That said, there's two main people that we interact with. There's the security buyer who is looking at Kubernetes as a unique thing that needs to be secured. Some companies come at it from a top-down, we're going to lock down that Kubernetes cluster. We come at from it from a bottom-up, we're going to make sure that what's deployed into that cluster is correctly configured. That's one use case on the security side. The other is on that cost management. There's a lot of companies out there that know they're over-provisioned wildly, know they're spending too much on their Kubernetes clusters and don't have insight into it. Because Kubernetes does the bin packing, the scaling, all those things for you, it's really hard to maintain control over that cost unless you have the proprietary logic that we've built in, and you can see this workload's costing me this much, this cluster's costing me that much, et cetera, and you can know how to go about scaling that down if need be. I mean, we're doubling down in those two areas, the security and the cost efficiency side. Having in the next few months, we're going to have very clear callbacks so you can charge back I'm losing the word right now, but you can point at your workloads and say, this is exactly what it cost me over the last few months and here's how that breaks down. Show your CFO, we're not wildly over provisioned. Show your CFO, I saved $150,000 this month, let me go hire that person. Those are the things that are key that are coming in the very near term. We do a lot of that already, but making that even clearer for reports to up the chain is what's coming. So we were at KubeCon in LA and it was terrible. This one's been pretty great. There's actually pretty good turnout. It's the right people. I think there's a lot of good conversations going on. People are excited to be here. Masks on, but that's fine, and everybody's doing just fine. Now, I wish I was in the sun a little bit more than, given I'm in Valencia, but other than that, it's going well.
It's been great. Feels like pre-pandemic times. Lots of engagement, lots of people excited to be out. It's awesome to be looking people in the face and shaking their hands and talking to them a little bit about what we're doing here at Day2IQ. Yeah, it's a great question. So Day2IQ is the leading independent Kubernetes solution provider. So what we're really helping people do is make Kubernetes an operational reality for their initiatives in cloud native. So we're helping reduce bottlenecks, drive production outcomes in minutes, not months, and really accelerate organizations on their cloud native journey. There's a handful of choice use cases we see. We see a lot of call for Kubernetes within edge environments, within isolated and disconnected environments, within hybrid and multi-cloud initiatives. And then as a future and advanced use case, we're starting to see a lot more traction around is leveraging a Kubernetes platform to do things like AI and ML and ML ops for the enterprise. And that's where we really see the future of cloud native going, is in some of those advanced use cases powered by Kubernetes and solutions like Day2IQ, Kubernetes Platform, DKP. Day2IQ Kubernetes Platform, also known as DKP, what we're doing is providing a curated Kubernetes experience where we deliver a distribution based off upstream Kubernetes and leading CNCF projects that provides a cluster and a Kubernetes environment that is truly hardened and enterprise grade and ready to run workloads in production at scale. Additionally, what we're doing with our enterprise version of our platform is we're not only working with our own Kubernetes distribution, but others as well, such as EKS, AKS from Azure and AWS, to deliver, again, those curated platform services inside of a hosted or managed Kubernetes offering like EKS to once again position that environment and that customer to drive production outcomes with their Kubernetes environment at scale in minutes, not months. So we're helping streamline the Kubernetes rollout, eliminating the bottleneck associated with Kubernetes, and getting workloads, applications, and data into production to drive business and mission outcomes for customers. Well, the second one's easy, Luke. Amazic is near the top of my list. So why partner? So Day2IQ is, again, a leading independent Kubernetes platform, but we see this market moving so fast and trying so eagerly to adopt technologies like ours that we recognize that the way to approach and scale this business is with partnerships, not trying to and insisting on doing this on our own. It's always a better together story, and as an independent platform, we have a really, really rich compatibility story with other technologies, and we think about partners as a great way to bring those integrations to customers to drive broader outcomes, more stacked up solution sets, end-to-end solutions for our customers. And we have a very focused portion of a customer's journey we want to be central to, and that's the Kubernetes piece. But Kubernetes in and of itself is just simply a means to an end. We need partners in other technologies putting on top and underneath Kubernetes to make it an operational reality and a massive success. And again, we think there's no better place to make that happen than with solution providers and partners at the front of this push and at the front of this journey, helping solve problems for our customers. Regarding ideal partnerships and partner profiles, we really are excited about Amazic as a wonderful partner who's looking to lean in with us. You recognize where this market is going. You identified that early, and that meant a lot to us. So organizations that really have their eye on cloud native, they recognize it as the current and future state of large-scale enterprise and infrastructure. That's who we start with, and we think there's a massive opportunity there. A lot of partners we see are sort of stuck in the way things have always been done, right? There's markets that are entrenched from a partnership perspective, backup, restore, cybersecurity. This is a new market. It's a market that's moving rapid. And so those that are trying to be out in front of it are who we look to immediately to lock arms and drive those outcomes fast for our customers. So, we also are looking for folks that want to embark on a journey together, and we're bringing a very flexible and partner-friendly model that is simple and focused as core tenets. And so that is all part of the DNA that we've put together around our program and what we put in front of folks. And when it resonates, when they like what they hear, these partnerships tend to move and move really, really quickly. And again, I can't emphasize enough how much we're excited about the Amazic partnership specifically, the bets you're willing to place with us, the identification of value early in the process. It's something we want to look back 2 to 3 years from now on joint successes and be very proud of, that we had the forethought to embrace this partnership now, recognizing where the market's going. Yeah, great question. I think, well, let's talk from a business perspective. We're very open to providing a focused, simple model and a simple ask of our partners, right? And on the back end of that, what we want to do is dangle very, very sizable margins for those partners to benefit from as a thank you for doing business together. But again, in this moment, we're not trying to overcomplicate the partner program, right? We really want to spend time enabling organizations to understand the value we can bring to their customers, and then we'll work together on prosecuting those sales. We're not in a position where we're expecting partners to just bring orders to us on a silver platter. That's not the market we're in. What we're looking for is partners that want to learn more about our value, embrace those concepts, bring them to their networks and communities, and if they're willing to do that and then be a broker for those conversations and opportunities, they will benefit and profit from it on the back end along with us as we jointly solve problems and better support our customers.
Yeah, so our primary product is called Era Search. So it's focused on the log management space, as I mentioned. So our primary value proposition is high scale and cost saving. So basically workloads that are maybe running on Elasticsearch or Splunk right now for log management, we can run those on significantly less hardware with the same performance, and we've scaled our environment up to as much as a petabyte per day on a single instance. Yeah, so the product can go on-premise or in the cloud, in our managed cloud. Everything was written from scratch for performance and efficiency. So most of our customers that we're seeing do the largest deployments are deploying it themselves, either on-premise on bare metal or in their own private cloud. And that's actually a really good fit for us because there aren't many other options in this space that are doing that. But we can also host it for you in our Era cloud. Yeah, it's a great question. We see a lot of pretty generic log management workloads. Obviously, Kubernetes deployments can generate a significant amount of log data. We're seeing just kind of a rise of log volumes in general, and I think as customers are scaling their log volumes up, maybe they're using Elasticsearch or something similar right now, they're starting to see the cost of running that, the operational challenges of running that become more and more of a pain on their engineering teams. And so our goal really with that is to be able to let customers store the same amount of log data or more at a lower cost, more efficiency, and with lower operational overhead. Yeah, definitely. So we are just opening up beta signups for a new product called Era Streams. It's an observability pipeline product, so basically allowing you to run a Kubernetes managed service layer that can take logs in multiple formats, allow you to do transformations, routing to multiple destinations, all in real time, and then it has a native integration with Era Search, our core product. So you can take data in, you can route it to Splunk, Elasticsearch, whatever other products you might be using, but you can use Era Search as a core storage destination for all of your logs. So you can do a little bit more to separate your logging workloads and manage costs more efficiently. Yeah, it's been a great event. I'm amazed at the turnout. We did a couple events that were smaller, maybe like 100, 200 people. So this is a huge event. So it's been really nice. It's great to see the community coming together, yeah, just really enjoying being here. Happy to be doing all this in Spain. certainly helps.